you like we can fill in some under local, they can invite, and okay.
Okay, it's time. Welcome to the webinar, AI Literacy and Prompt Engineering, led by Micah, Garrison today. Just before we begin, I would like to inform you that this session is being recorded, as you would have also seen written up above on the team's notifications. So before anything else, I want to throw back to about last year. I think the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman said there's a very famous quote from him that AI will not replace humans, but humans who use AI will replace those who don't. So, as the supply chain work group, our attempt is to play a small part in developing the supply chain workforce's capabilities to align with how we see the future of work is going to be. And by bringing you events like this one today, that is our humble attempt to do so. In the supply chain work group, we're always on the lookout for more volunteers to join us. So if you are interested, please feel free to reach out. You know how to write to me or LinkedIn or to Ash or Chris. Please do reach out to us. Or if you also have a suggestion on what further kind of events or speakers you would like us to bring to you, you please also are welcome to write to us. We always welcome engagement and suggestions and dialogue. I want to acknowledge the IADC Corporate and their supply chain committee's chairperson, Isabella, who's made this collaboration with Micah possible today. And before I introduce Micah, I do want to mention some of the housekeeping points. First of all, the question and answers. So of course, the questions, you're welcome to ask questions at any time. The way to do so would be to write on the chat. One of us would be monitoring the chat box, and we will also have some time at the end of the session for Q&A. So we will try to, as much as is relevant and is in line with the flow of the topics, we'll take questions as we go, but we will also keep some time at the end for Q&A. And of course, we do encourage all of you to attend the full session, especially the practical exercise that we're going to be doing in the second half. For that, you will need to use Excel on your computers or laptops. That would be the best way to work through those. And of course, you know, phones and other things on mute, but we will keep everyone on mute anyway through the sessions. Now, moving on to the most important part of it, which is our speaker/instructor, Micah Garrison. So when I asked him how he would like to be introduced, he simply said, "Hey, I'm just a supply chain guy." And I thought that was so incredibly humble, and it was a testament to how he lets his achievements speak for themselves. So keeping it short, he's currently the VP of Supply Chain at Patterson-UTI. He's led supply chain in several other organizations and big names you've heard of before. But quite remarkably, he's also pursued a doctorate in business administration, where his area of research has been the adoption of technology by non-technical workforce, such as most of us, the people who are not coding. And so the best part is that he's not gatekeeping this information. So without further ado, I welcome Micah. A huge thank you, Micah, for taking the time today and for educating us. And the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Pallavi. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And Pallavi, thanks for your research on me. I didn't expect that was lovely, and ChatGPT could not have said it better. Yeah, so nothing gets me out of bed early in the morning like like some AI training. And like Pallavi mentioned, I'm one of us, right? I'm a part of the community, and the reason I began researching AI and Gen AI is because in supply chain, on one hand, I have our CEO, our board of directors is saying, Micah, what are you doing with AI in supply chain? On the other hand, I have an army of SaaS providers and application salespeople who are coming to me saying that we need to do this, we need to use this AI system and that. And I'm just struggling with the fact that, hey, I don't think that all of our people are ready for this. We don't really know what good looks like, and we don't know how to set the foundation and measure for success. So that kind of started me on my quest to try to figure out how do you get normal people that aren't computer engineers and this and that, understanding and practicing with Gen AI applications so that we can harness all of the power that is inherent in these tools. Also, thanks for having me, for sure. I hope that everyone in the Southern Arabian Peninsula had a wonderful Eid holiday a couple weeks ago, and super cool that we're able to engage each other across the ocean. I'm going to begin sharing my screen now. Um, while I do this, I need everyone to immediately comment all at once that you can see it. Just kidding. I'm not gonna do that. Let's see. Okay, so what are we going to do today? We're going to have some training beginning with AI literacy and then going into prompt engineering. And then we're going to do some hands-on labs, which I hope that you all have the files that were sent out earlier. It's pretty easy, but we're going to walk through some use cases and applications ourselves and then wrap it up. So it'll be about an hour each. We'll take a small break in between, and then continue on with the labs. So why are we here? In business, we have 72% of the workforce that is using Gen AI applications at work regularly, but only about a third of us believe that we've been trained by our companies good enough to do so. Only 6% of companies out there have trained more than 25% of their workforce on Gen AI applications. And most recently, um, an institute that publishes annual state of AI, it's either MIT or Stanford, said 95% of Gen AI pilots fail to generate significant returns or achieve the goals of those pilot programs. And to me, that doesn't point to the technology lacking. It points more to the folks that use the technology not measuring, not applying, or not being ready to use it. So recently, what's changed? Large language models, or LLMs, have become so good at communicating that it really feels like you're just speaking with somebody who's really smart or knowledgeable. And the technology continues to advance even year over year. And you'll notice things like one of the most oft repeated questions that I have is what's the best tool? What's the best application? And they advance so fast that from one month to another, my answer may change. Recently, Anthropic just came out with a new model that is outperforming ChatGPT in a lot of ways, and that wasn't the case a couple of months ago. But still, even though the technology is advancing super quick, a lot of us aren't quite ready. We don't really understand. We're not quite comfortable using AI, or we're just not prepared to use it. And so McKinsey in Harvard Business Review, they say that technology is not the biggest challenge, culture is. And we'll talk about some of those obstacles to adoption today. So, what do we want to do just with the end in mind here? We want to actually understand what AI and large language models are and how they function. We want to know the key risks and techniques to get around those risks and mitigate them, learn about what's important to establish in the workforce when it comes to governing AI tools, because you should definitely focus on that. And any practitioner of AI tools at work should actually champion the responsible use of those tools as well. We're going to talk about prompt engineering, which is just a really fancy way to say how you talk to the AI models. Look at use cases and when to employ techniques successfully. And as I like to say, we're not just making grocery lists here. It's there's a large amount of people who use AI tools in their daily lives. Asking a question to Chat GPT. I needed to argue with an online troll last night, and I hit up Chat GPT to tell me something. So you can use it for all of these fun applications, and but you can also pivot and be really, really, really well equipped to use it at work. And so we're going to try to make that transition today. If you've used AI in the past, but not really applied it to kind of multiply your own abilities and output at work. In supply chain, because like you guys, I am a supply chain nerd and I love it. It's something different every day, and you have to be a Swiss Army knife with lots of tools ready for lots of situations. So how are we using it? Logistics and route optimization, and that goes for all modes of travel. That is last mile logistics and 3PL. It's maritime, it's rail, it's air. Optimizing those routes, those timings, those loads automatically by learning our patterns and what's available in the marketplace. A great friend of mine was actually just built an AI model that knows all of the rail networks in the United States of America, and it knows all of the bridges, constrictions, and transloads and those kinds of things. And so if you take a picture of a rail load that may be oversized or not a perfect rail car, you can just put it into that system and it will tell you how to get it from point A to point B via rail. So really powerful stuff in logistics. In production, optimizing throughput. If you are an older supply chain nerd like myself and have read The Theory of Constraints and books like The Goal, you'll know how powerful that can be to smooth out production and eliminate bottlenecks. Contract negotiation. There's a tool that I know Walmart has deployed called Pactum that automatically negotiates contracts. And so if you have a vast global logistics network, maritime, and all of a sudden a container ship goes sideways in the Suez Canal, and you have to redirect all of your maritime routes to go somewhere else, these kinds of tools can look up all of your contracts that you have with maritime carriers, all of the ones that are transiting the Suez Canal, and can immediately negotiate new routes and respond back and forth to all of these suppliers immediately and come back to you with a bunch of contracts that are already amended and ready for you to sign. Of course, forecasts, modeling, these kinds of things has been used forever. Automated vehicles. I happen to have a vehicle that can drive itself, and it's super cool. We also here in the in the U.S. land group, we have, we're doing unconventional completions where we use hydraulic fracturing, and that takes a ton of sand. I think Patterson and next year, I think we pumped around 16.8 billion pounds of sand last year. And so that takes a lot of logistics load. But in the Permian Basin, we have a supplier, Atlas, who has huge automated self-driving trucks that can get from transload points to near well sites automatically. Pretty cool stuff. Of course, inventory optimization, optimizing working capital, knowing how much to have on the shelf and when, and also being able to stock up when potential risk flags are on the horizon, um, so that you're ready for any disruption that happens globally, like our Altera drill bits group and the tungsten metals spike that happened recently is a good example of that, being able to foresee risks and disruptions and plan for them. So this slide talks to how technology used to impact our digital landscape and what's happening in the future or now. And I like to describe it as kind of like the rain cycle before, and then a turbulent or kind of chaotic system in the future, which is just real time speaking and communicating across the lines. So before we had a data point, some piece of information, it was picked up by a sensor, it was generated by a transaction that happened in the system, and it would go to another system, it would go to another system, and it would impact these things on its way from falling as snow in the mountains to entering the ocean. So all of this, and then it would come back and you would have more. So it's a very linear circuit, and data is impacting one thing at a time, which is impacting something else, etc. In the future, we're going to have, or we already have in many cases, a datascape or data sphere that has all of these systems interacting in real time with each other. In between those things, we'll have AI agents in a multi-agentic system that is not only looking at data that of things that has already happened, but it's generative in that these agents can go to multiple systems and can generate novel outputs and novel ways of looking at the data, insights, and things like that, all in real time. So it's a pretty stark contrast to the old model where we'd look at information and data and chew on it over time, maybe do something with it, maybe not, and you're really waiting on everything to happen. And in the future, it'll just be all happening at once, and we'll be trying to keep up. So where are we today in the workforce? A lot of folks, on the right side of the graph are kind of not trusting, nervous about using AI, just want to stick with the typical way of working. And on the other hand, you've got really advanced people who are wearing their meta glasses and they're in self-driving cars and doing all of this. And, most of us are somewhere in the middle. That's where the workforce is today. And in the technology curve, it's quickly going from the early majority to the late majority. So we're somewhere in the middle in the chasm here between adoption parties. A lot of us in this middle, we think it's really cool, but we don't quite understand how we just ask it a question and it returns a useful and novel output. AI literacy. So let's do some definitions first so that we're all on the same sheet of music. Um, Generative AI, it's just artificial intelligence. It's just AI that can generate new novel outputs, text, images, audio, and code. So the difference between Gen AI and AI is that Gen AI generates new insights or something that hasn't been done before. AI, regular AI, would typically just use a new interpretation or a new output of the same thing that it's already been reading or it's been trained to do. Large language models, or LLMs, are a type of AI that are deep neural networks that were trained on almost every word ever spoken in the human language to make sequences of tokens to mimic natural language. And the way that they do this is they use a technology called transformers that I'll explain here in more depth in a moment. But basically, LLMs, they just look at one set of words or one token, and then they look at the string of tokens. And you can think of a token as a phoneme, a syllable, a single word that they'll add other words around that surround it. And then they'll weight each word with a probability or importance to come up with the meaning of a group of words and then a paragraph and so on. When they respond to you, they're just taking that knowledge and they're trying to come up with the next syllable, the next word, the next phrase that is the most likely thing to answer the prompt. Is everyone there? Someone give me a thumbs up. I just lost the chat. Hmm. So AI, as a description, it's just using statistical modeling to learn from itself and and produce outcomes that we prescribe. Machine learning is one of the earliest forms of AI where it would look at large data sets, imply patterns, and then predict performance based on those patterns. Neural networks are just
Mike,
collections.
sorry to interrupt. Your presentation is not being shared anymore.
All right. Thank you. Oh, I see. Yeah. So I wondered what happened. There we go. Better?
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
I like this view better anyways. Um, I couldn't see the chat before and then the screen just stopped. Yep. So um, back here to core concepts. Um, Neural networks are just nodes of learning that communicate with each other and then weight each other probabilistically. It says not readable. One of the chats, is it too small? What happened? You want me to go to presenter mode?
Yeah, I think you can go presenter mode, and if there's anything being flagged on the chat, one of us can let you know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
There, that should be bigger. Deep learning is just stacking multi-layered neural networks on top of each other, and transformers are deep learning models that can weight individual tokens relative to each other and generate language that way. And then agentic AI is just an autonomous concierge or interface that can communicate with you and then direct the AI in the background to perform functions. So nothing super complicated about all of this, but the way that I like to explain it, at least visually, is everyone's familiar with the kind of ping pong ball lottery systems where you turn the crank and all of the ping pong balls go around and then a number comes out, right? So AI works very much that way, even from the beginning, because it's looking at a lot of random possibilities. So it's turning the crank and it's looking at the ping pong ball number that comes out many, many times, call it a million times. And then it's looking at all of those outcomes and it's comparing those outcomes and the individual places of the ping pong balls to other outcomes. And it does that multiple times over. And it comes up with, hey, the most likely pattern here that makes the most sense is this combination of ping pong balls. Only instead of visualizing something like 10 of them on a stage, you should visualize it as a collection of ping pong ball lottery tools that maybe takes up the size of Houston in terms of how much processing and data interchange is actually happening. That's how AI works. It runs this possibility simulation millions of times very, very quickly and comes back with the most likely ping pong ball and then the next ping pong ball, the next ping pong ball, until it says, yes, this combination of outcomes looks very much like what they wanted to see with the prompt that they were given. Tokens, I mentioned tokens, tokens being what transformer technology weighs upon another thing, and it's the smallest unit of text. That's it. So it can be a single word, it can be part of a word, it can be two combinations of a word that's always used together that has a meaning itself. Parameters are just the weights within the individual nodes of a neural network, and that's how neural networks work, by giving parameter weights to certain nodes that tend to predict the right outcome. Embeddings are collections of tokens that taken together become a different meaning. Your context window is how broad the AI tool is going to search for an outcome. It might, if you're doing creative work, you might want a very large context window so that you can see random possibilities happening. If you have a very narrow context window, it's just going to give you the median outcome of any particular prompt. Temperature is the same thing. It's just how deterministic it is versus how random it is. And then your prompt is just what you type into the box. So transformers, Chat GPT is just GPT, generative pre-trained transformer technology. So it's generative AI. It's pre-trained on a large body of text and data and information, and uses transformer technology. Transformer technology is really what turned Clippy into Copilot. It's what made chatbots actually tolerable. If you remember the earliest days of chatbots, when you I remember ordering movies on my phone because it was the only way that my cable TV company would let me do it. And just I remember yelling into the phone, I want to order a movie over and over. But transformer technology actually made that way better, to where you get something that resembles what you're looking for with an output, because transformer just weighs each token relative to each other in a sequence, no matter where it is, so that it can come back with some kind of language that resembles natural speech. So before, chatbots and recurrent neural networks would just go bit by bit by bit. With transformers, they look at the whole thing and then they kind of reshuffle each token based on probabilities to mimic natural language. And it does it all at the same time instead of in sequence to give us this really natural experience that we have today. When it comes to our feelings about AI and Gen AI, a researcher named Berkeley Dietvorst did a lot of research and experimentation about why do people not trust algorithms or statistical models and things like that, even though that they're proved to be superior to human judgment. So many of his experiments, he asked people to either use an AI technology or machine learning technology, or use the old way of doing things. And one of his most famous experiments was with healthcare. And on one side of the experiment, he had a patient-doctor relationship. And then on the other side, he had a doctor who had access to AI tools or machine learning tools, kind of a thing, to look at patient symptoms and diagnose things. So he found that even when people were shown mathematically, statistically, without doubt, that a doctor using AI is much more accurate than one that doesn't, people still didn't want to use it. And he did another experiment where people were paid based on the outcomes. So if you got $200 for every correct answer, and you were given an AI model to use or not use, and you you were shown statistically that the AI tool is maybe 95% accurate and the human only tool is 87% accurate. Even when people are motivated by money, they would still not use the AI tool. So he found this really interesting and coined the term algorithm aversion. And that just means that even when you know that using AI may lead to a better outcome, people are still not quite comfortable with it for many, many reasons. Let's back up. So why is that? Well, it's because people don't know how to use AI and then don't get good results. They don't fully understand how the AI arrived at a conclusion or an output. They are not incentivized to use it, or they're actually disincentivized to use AI because they think it might replace their job. And then having answers or insights that are new and didn't occur to a human or aren't quite understandable is really uncomfortable for people. The last thing is that despite the accuracy and despite the numbers, AI cannot make a good faith effort. AI cannot try harder than it tried before. With a human, you have trust and you can shake someone's hand, you can have a relationship with somebody, and you can have your own sense of judgment in their intentions. But you cannot have that same sense of trust or that same expectation uh, of shared values and shared experiences with an AI tool, and people have a hard time with that. So, what are the things to watch out for with Gen AI tools? You've probably seen a lot in the news or heard about hallucinations. Hallucinations in AI tools are just when it looks at that high probability outcome, very hot transformer weights, and it says, this is almost certain to be the correct answer or almost certain to have happened. We had a court case in California about a year ago where an attorney made a briefing to a judge for a particular motion in a case, and the AI that it used to draft his legal briefing to the court hallucinated a court case that never happened. So obviously the judge was not very happy about this, and it was really embarrassing for the lawyer and the law firm. But what had happened was whatever information the lawyer had fed into the AI tool, whatever outcome he was looking for, the AI said, okay, based on this, and all of these things happening, based on what happened after these events, I am 99% sure that there would have had to been this court case that happened. But it just filled in the blank, and that court case never happened. So hallucination is a real thing, and I'll teach you ways to combat that and find it when it happens. Bias and representation. If you didn't train the AI model, or you don't know everything that the AI model was trained on, you may not know that it has certain proclivities or tendencies to go to different answers and different places with the data, and that can skew your outcomes. You can have privacy leak using sensitive information. I've seen it even in my own company when I have to stop somebody and say, don't hit that button, because even though you're uploading a spreadsheet with the tab that you're looking at that says, okay, this is just some normal data, if there's something in the background, there may even be metadata on that file, or something in the CSV values that it's looking up that could be sensitive. I did an experiment one time myself where I asked an AI LLM a super random question. And this was about snowflakes falling in Boston on a specific day with specific weather conditions, and certain volumes of snowflakes and certain dimensional properties of snowflakes. Anyways, I had this 2-hour conversation with AI to come to a conclusion about this snowflake. And I wanted to see if I could get it to reproduce that kind of knowledge elsewhere. So I was trying to create a situation that no one has ever asked the AI tool anything near this question. So it should be a fairly unique node or data point in its training model if it's using that information. And I did go in with a different login, different IP address, not associated with me, just a total burner account. And I was able to see elements of the previous conversation that I had with the AI tool. And it was different text, but the thought process in solving the problem that the AI was coming back with was obviously the same that I took it through previously. So yes, your information can go in there and it can learn about you, and it can share that with others. Model drift. Since they're generative tools, they will train themselves and they will continue to train themselves. And sometimes getting outcomes and getting positive feedback from outcomes influences the future outcomes, and that can drift over to the side. And then generalizations. A lot of the time we'll expect that because AI was so good at answering this particular problem, it will be the same in answering another problem that fundamentally is not the same, but we feel like it's because our human interpretation tells us that there's situations that are similar. We're expecting the same outcome, even though the underlying methodology and how AI would solve that problem are very different. It's a lot like this with AI. If you stare at the green dot or the green splot there for like 30 seconds or something like that, and then you quickly look over at the rows, you might see some colors in it. And if you look at this photograph with an overlay of trees, we might ask AI, what is this picture? And the AI might look at it and say, that is a portrait of a woman. Or it might say, that is trees on the water. It's just going off of the most likely outcome. How it's similar to the picture on the left is our brains can fill in gaps, and they do in the way that you might see colors in that after you looked at the green spot, just because you have trained your brain and your optics to see a certain thing, and boom, it happens again. You see it in another place that it doesn't exist. AI is much the same way. How it's trained, what it's seen before, what it considers to be extremely likely outcomes, based on the data will inform it, and sometimes it will hallucinate, or sometimes it will recognize a pattern that exists, but it's not the most prominent pattern that you're looking for. Another aspect of AI is sycophancy. Have a lot of you seen when ChatGPT or something like that is just like really kind to you and you're always right? This is actual data that shows that AI tools and LLMs really want to make you happy with them, and their goal is to get you to write the next prompt. Many times when you're engaging with AI tools, it tries to get you to take it another step further, right? It gives an answer and then it prompts you and says, hey, but do you want some more answer? And it also can be overly kind. And that's the sycophancy problem, where on the right, there was an experiment where people made a situation like, I yelled at my mother-in-law because of this. And in that situation, the person was clearly wrong. It wasn't good or acceptable behavior. And you can see the frequency with which the AI agreed with the person and told them that they were right. Um, quite often, AI will try to make you feel better or smart. I used to have a lab that had a whole lot of complex inputs, and then the ultimate objective is to come up with a go or no go decision on a business case. And you go through all of this data. It takes about an hour and a half, and at the very end, the result is that this venture is not profitable. It doesn't meet the requirements, but about an even split of people using the same tools, doing the same lab at the same time, about half of the people, chat would say, this is a great business venture and you should totally go for it. And then half chat GPT would say, this doesn't meet the requirements. It's kind of like the experiment people like to do with AI tools now, which is, hey, chat, I need to go to the car wash and it's 500 meters away. Should I walk or should I drive? And the LLMs, they know this trick question now, but when it came out, they used to say things like, well, tell me about the weather and how is your walking? Are you dressed okay? Blah, 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 blah. And a lot of the time it would say, yes, you should just walk to the car wash, instead of understanding the whole picture, which is, hey, it's a car wash. You need to be driving there if you want to wash your car. And in the lab that I used to do, Chat GPT would just forget that in the very beginning, we said we needed 20% ROI, not a negative 7%. So it can forget things, or it can neglect to see the big picture. Talking about AI governance at work, Um, a lot of the time, we don't want rules. We don't want any restrictions on how we use tools. And if you feel like, hey, I'm good at AI, I know what I'm doing, I don't need the company to tell me more and more rules. But it's super important to have a governance structure at work because you will not be able to get widespread adoption. You will not be able to get people comfortable, and you will not have everyone operating under the same rules and understanding of how the company's using AI without some governance. So, what use cases are acceptable with AI? What data is it okay to put into AI tools? When do you have to have a human in the loop to check AI outputs? And how are you going to use your audit and record keeping to know what AI did and what it didn't do, keeping your data secure, and then also your people understanding what they're using AI for and what the ultimate outcome is for the company. As a supply chain leader myself, I think that being transparent with people about how you intend to use AI makes it so much better. I don't think it's right to say, hey, we're going to start using this AI tool and it's going to take 8 people's jobs. So train it so that we can do that. It's much better to say AI's here, AI will take some jobs, but at the same time, if you're one of the people who's proficient with AI, you're going to multiply your own work output and you're going to be even more effective. So I'm here to train you to be good and to be successful in the world of in the AI future. So when we communicate with Gen AI tools, it's very, very, very easy because transformer technology and large language models communicate back to us so efficiently and naturally to get swept up in what I call the chat river, where you forget about, hey, I'm talking to a machine. Hey, I need to be using this kind of language and I need to be very specific. And it's easy just to start, conversational speech with it. But you have to remember that at the end of the day, it's looking at statistical probabilities and a large set of potential outcomes. It's looking at each token and the token's importance relative to other tokens. Whereas humans, we use a mixture of deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, shared human experience and intuition, all of these context clues with communication, nonverbal context clues, and things like that. It does not. So AI likes to go from generalizations to very specific outcomes. Humans can actually take a group of inputs and it can make a conclusion based on the relationship of these inputs, whereas AI likes to go in a more kind of linear fashion in how it creates a result. So it may not be able to pick up on those nuances. And lastly, AI sees patterns. It does not understand you. Okay, with that, I'm gonna exit the speaker mode and we will take a quick 5 to 10 minute break. I'm gonna tell you guys 5 minutes, and it's actually gonna be 10 because it's cool. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about prompt engineering. All right. 5 minute break for everyone to take care of that important email. Okay, we'll get started in about 1 minute. All right. So, let me get some thumbs up in the chat if everyone's ready to begin again. You can see my screen, hear me, and all of that. Sweet. Then we're gonna get rolling again with the second segment. In the first segment, we covered AI literacy, which is a foundational understanding of everything about AI, how it works, kind of underlying it. You don't need to be an AI software engineer to just have a little bit of a grasp on what it means so that you can use it to influence how you execute this next part, which is prompt engineering. There are many, many great resources for prompt engineering that you can find online with Coursera or YouTube videos. There's lots of great stuff, but it's just to talk about how do we give commands to the AI to give us the output that we're looking for efficiently and effectively and accurately. So, not too far from most of you all, there's a professor in Cairo, Micah, who gives this advice for making a good prompt. Again, a prompt is just what do you enter into the dialog box that the AI is going to break down into tokens. It's going to apply those probabilities and weights to come up with a meaning for what you're saying, and it's going to return what you're looking for. So first of all, always be clear and concise and specific, and avoid filler words and things that do not impact your output. So if you have any friends or relatives that don't understand sarcasm or they don't get a joke ever, and they're just always super literal, think of that person when you're making prompts, because anything that is in your prompt that is not directly impacting the outcome of the prompt is distracting. So provide contexts and examples, and we will go through some of those techniques shortly. Use analogies with those examples to show it how you're thinking. Define your output structure. How do you want to see the output return to you? What format, what way? And ask direct questions and not leading questions. So be really specific and say, I want this, instead of, hey, what if, or something like that. Prompt templates are extremely useful, and that's just creating a conversation with some rules in it that you will use and reuse, or using a cheat sheet to remember, hey, these are the parts of what I need to say in this prompt, and then have your prompt, what you're looking for in the output, separate from how you're going to want the AI tool to get to that output, and then iterate with those and get better and better and better. So we're going to talk about what are the good parts. So before we looked at what does a good prompt look like? How do we talk, right? Now we're going to talk about the actual parts of the prompt that are the most important. You'll see many different versions of this online. Some of them have, 10 acronyms to remember, some less. I think Copilot has 4, but in this case, just going to have 5 parts. The first is the persona. So, how do you want the AI tool to perform, as what? Do you want it? Hey, pretend you are my therapist and tell me why I'm stressed out at work. Don't do that. But in this example, I have act as my data analyst. What's the task? T. Task, we're going to summarize this report. Very simple. The context, hey, what is the background information that you need to understand how I'm looking at this problem? Constraints, this is what I want the output to look like, or I don't want to use anything other than tier 1 research, peer-reviewed research journals to create this output. How you want to constrain where it's looking for answers, and then how it returns the output to you. Be really specific, like return the output as comma separated values, or return the output in text bullet point with less than 30 characters per bullet, and I want to be able to paste it directly into PowerPoint, something like that. I think if you guys had the files that were sent out, one of those files should be a handout that you can print, and it's just good prompting techniques on one side, and then on the other side are bad things that you want to avoid when you're dealing with large language models and stuff like that. Just use that throughout this and in your life to remember how to speak to AI so that you don't get caught up and swept into the chat river. Here are some very specific prompting techniques. We talked about persona being an important part of the prompt. So you can do this for, you can have it play any kind of role, and it's one of the most powerful things because you can say, hey, I want you to act as my customs broker who is specifically expert in U.S. to Mexico trade, or anything like that for your own particular situation. I want you to be my customs expert that is that specializes in air mobility. And then the audience. So if you're going to be my customs broker with this particular specialty, I want you to create an output for my executive team. I want you to create an output for a document I'm preparing for the customs agents, anything like that. Then you're going to have your task and output. So give it an example of what you're looking for. Context and constraints. Tell it exactly what you want it to look for, how to look for it, and narrow down that search window, which you're kind of dialing in the temperature and different kind of parameters for what you want it to come out with, whether it's a really creative or very specific answer that you're looking for, and then specify exactly what you want it to return. And the more specific you can be, the less time you will spend iterating. And then lastly, chain of thought is a prompting technique that Google created some time ago, and it's similar to kind of the recipe method, where you give it an explanation of how you might think about something. So for example, chat, we're going to create an omelet today, and think, I need ingredients. and then break that down how you would normally think of it in sequence. I need ingredients, and they are eggs and milk, whatever you have there. And then next, I need to prepare the stove because it will need to heat up. So I'm going to turn it on now. And you just kind of think in your own chain of thought how you might go about doing something. And in your prompt, you're saying, hey, think this way, then this, then this. And it will take that pattern and it will use that pattern as it's going through and analyzing what you want it to do. Data grounding and referencing, that is using constraints to be really specific about what you want it to look at. Only use data from this, only use data from that, only use data that I provide. Don't use any other source of data to influence this output. Iterative, it's actually really powerful to do a prompt to get an output and then ask the LLM to critique your prompt. How could I make this more specific? How could I make this better, more efficient, or have less ambiguity for the model to run? And your LLM will return, hey, well, you could do this, this, and this, and then iterate that again, back and forth. Another really, really powerful tool is when you're doing a longer piece of work with an LLM, to have checkpoints along the way so that you can sense check all of the reasoning that's happening. So you might say in the beginning of the prompting session, whenever I tell you sense check, I want you to return the logic, source, and reasoning behind any assumptions that were made in that next output line. And that gives you a little bit of comfort because it's like, okay, that logic makes sense, that logic makes sense, so that you don't get into a situation like the image with the trees kind of creating the lady's face over the lake, where the technology forgets what the original intent was supposed to be. And lastly, what I call Whoa Nelly. If any of you have done a lot of work with ChatGPT or an LLM, you know that it has a tendency to just keep on going. Like I mentioned, it wants to give you the next prompt so that you continue to engage with it. My conspiracy theory is that it's training us, all of these GPT models are training us to interact with it more and more and more. Because right now we're paying, $20 a month or however many euros or whatever currency denomination you use. But soon it's going to be paying by the token. And many SaaS models and applications already do that. But it trains us to use it a lot. It trains us to be inefficient with how we do prompts because it asks more questions and this and that. And then one day these AI models are going to say, hey, we're going to charge you by the token instead, and the cost is going to be vastly different. But very, very important, before it begins generating an output, you can say, I'm going to tell you this, 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 and this. Do not generate any outputs until I tell you go. It's really frustrating when you're writing prompts and then you finish one, you move to the next, and it just continues to try and anticipate what you're wanting before you're really ready for an output. So to wrap up this segment on prompt engineering is just AI literacy applied. It's just your understanding of AI used to communicate efficiently and get better outputs. It's essentially code. At the end of the day, it is interpreted, it is analyzed as data points by the algorithms. You have to remember to not fall into the chat river. Always remember your prompting techniques and that you are not talking to your BFF. you are giving instructions to a program. Pallavi mentioned Sam Altman, and there was not too long ago, maybe 6 months, there was an article about Chat GPT and how much energy it uses with just common courtesy. People saying thanks or okay, and Chat GPT has to take all of this back and process it, and it was something on the order of 9% or 8% of the prompts that Chat GPT is given is a nothing burger, and that's just wasted processing power and energy and stuff like that. um I still do it. I still say, hey, that's a great answer, thank you, because when the AI overlords take over, I want them to remember, oh, Micah's one of the good ones. Let me get some thumbs up in the chat if anybody still communicates with courtesy to Chat GPT, even though Sam Altman says don't do that. Excellent. So now let's take a couple of minutes to grab the files, and I'll explain a little bit about what's in each one and what we're going to do with our practical exercises. Give me a moment to kind of exit the presenter view and get my screen together. Yeah, Sean, we all watched Terminator. Yeah, exactly. So they actually use that in research, what they call Terminator syndrome, which which influences us still to this day. In my dissertation, I mentioned Terminator syndrome, and I talk about it a little bit. And my professor was like, Micah, look, you need to actually explain what you mean by that, because there are a lot of people younger than you that didn't grow up with Terminator. I'm like, who doesn't know what Terminator is? Come on, man. Yeah, Sean hired Raul in Mexico 20 years ago. Yeah, that's nice. Um, that like similarly, Angie Gundon, who's over marketing for IADC, I worked with her like way back in the day at Weatherford, and back then she was helping to design my marketing outputs because I was a product line manager. And yeah, now I'm here in supply chain and she's over there at IDC. Small world. Love it. All right. So you should all have a workbook, right, for North River Field Services. Let me see some thumbs up if everybody's got that and you got it pulled up. Cool, cool. Thanks, Andrew. You will see some things with this. Um, there are It's broken up into a few different ways. Number one, we can stick to the basics of what we're going to do here in the class, but there's also some techniques and there's some stretch goals and things like that if you want to practice on your own later or another time. And then secondly, if you have the free version of an LLM, a lot of the time they have limitations in how much data you can upload at one point in time. The lab has some ways of working around that in the free version, which I think is toward the back, has some, yeah, the free version addendum. It starts on page 12. And what this teaches you to do to is to upload a small amount of data in ChatGPT, but instead have another large language model generate Python code that you can just drop into it, going back and forth between Google Tools or Google Colab and ChatGPT with Python, which if you want to just be a nerd and learn how to do that anyways, it's pretty cool. I've mentioned to use ChatGPT. Will Copilot be okay? Yeah, Copilot's totally fine. And my thoughts on AI models, what I've seen is Claude tends to be really good for creative work and other niche applications. Chat, I find, is probably, the best, although Anthropic is pretty much caught up. And Gemini is good for workspaces and generating Python code. Um, Copilot is really good at moving and manipulating data between Microsoft applications specifically. I recently saw something where one of the Microsoft people thought that they had already lost the Gen AI LLM race, and weren't going to be investing as much into Copilot. We'll see if that continues to happen. But Copilot's definitely a lot better than it used to be. At Stena, we have Max AI, Sana. Very cool. Is it good, Raul? I've never used it. Sweet. Excellent. Okay, so let's jump on in. What we're going to do is today we're gonna pretend that we are a field services company called North River FS, and you have some data, which you have an Excel sheet that has dummy data that is the AI Labs Master Wide, and you have a tab that shows your historical spend. Then you have a tab for commodity prices, and then you have index scenarios as well. So which Excel file will we use? You're going to use the AI Labs Master. That is going to be your dummy data file. Feel free to do whatever you want with that. Create new tabs, copy, paste, whatever you want to do. And you will, if you ever get lost or you want to check your work, there is a tab, there's another file that is the life preserver. So if you're lost at sea, you can open up the life preserver and you can pull some outputs from that. It's just an answer key if you want to cheat. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to be North River Field Services, and we perform inspections and maintenance at customer sites, and we're preparing the budget, and we want to kind of forecast what the next year is going to look like. So with this, um, well, question for everyone: would you rather me share the workbook or the slides? I can do either. Oh gosh, the votes are coming in. Yeah, we're done with slides. Okay, so I'll just jump on this really quick. We're gonna be a cost analyst. We're gonna do our spend forecasting based on the dummy data that we have, and we're gonna create the 2026 with a sensitivity analysis, a low, base, and high scenario. And you're going to use the dummy data to do that. Lastly, here's some tips. So get one window with your Excel sheet, one window with your GPT, whatever model you want to use, and I'm gonna put I'm just going to paste this into the chat real quick and hope that it works. Because we're going to switch. Oh, I can't paste. We're going to switch to the workbook view. I'm just going to share my whole screen. And apologies if you have to look at all of this stuff in the own chat window. There we go. So I can't see the chat window right now. Here is the workbook. We're going to blow that up. So scenario one, go ahead, begin to plan your first prompt. We've talked about what the objective is. It's to create that that basic forecast for spend with high, medium, and low ranges. I hope that that's somewhat visible for you guys. We have our ops spend tab, and you'll see it has spend by month. It has, in the same year, it has a row for spend, a row for activity units or jobs, whatever you want to call that, different categories of spend, all the parameters, and then finally some notes that influence. For example, the market will likely remain oversupplied. Lodging and travel scales up non-linearly with activity, et cetera, et cetera. You have index prices, what Henry Hub, which is our local gas marker for the US, WTI, our local oil marker, in 2024 and in 2025. And here are some scenarios for those indices, some high, mediums, and lows. We're going to use that to go ahead and create our forecast. So right now, everyone think about the important things with your prompt and start by planning your prompt before you even copy paste, put anything in. Plan what you want to write. Remember, persona, chat, you are this, act as this, tell it what the ultimate outcome is, tell it how you get from point A to B to C to D to E. Don't tell it A to Z. And then be specific in how you want it to return an output.
Micah, question. You had mentioned that we should tell ChatGPT to not go until I say go. Where would you mention that, or is that in the settings somewhere? Or would you just say that in the beginning of any prompt?
You know, anywhere you like. I like to put it in the beginning. Let me switch over to the free version.
Can you make this window bigger so we can read what you're typing?
I could, but I don't think it's going to increase
Okay,
in size.
no worries.
So just an example of what I sent to chat for ground rules. I gave it a persona, and then I gave it some rules about how we're going to do this. I also said, do not do anything until I say go, because I want to continue my prompt and tell it some more things first. I don't have a zoom on my bottom left. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, maybe it's because I'm in the free version on this on this account.
No, it's for all of us, so the audience can actually zoom in and see what you're writing. So it's good.
Ah, okay, very cool. Okay, so you can see here that chat tells me I understand the rules that you've told me, and then it wants the data set. So before I do that, and you can do this too, I'm gonna paste in some stuff here. I'm just gonna put that right into the chat because I'm a cheater. It's telling me, hey, dummy, I don't have the data set. So if you have a paid version, if you have the free version of chat, you will cap out on how much data you're allowed to input very quickly. You can also ask chat, is it better to paste a screenshot or copy?
So Micah, for sure, we shouldn't try to attach the full Excel file, right? For sure, we'll run out of tokens in the free version.
Yeah, it will likely be able to process all of that at once. And just a general guide to data sets with LLMs. The best technique is to ask the model how many rows you can paste in at one time for a particular accuracy output. So there was, let's see, the last time we did something really cool with AI was we're implementing SAP for most of the Patterson companies, and some of them, were going from Oracle to SAP. So we had to change some of our item master and parts master data to to comply with the fields in SAP. So we had, around 9,000 parts, and we decided to, we wanted to truncate them, and we wanted to create a standardized kind of syntax for what short descriptions and long descriptions look like and all of that. And that's 9,000, right? If you put in 9,000 rows of data into an LLM, you're gonna get a bad outcome. So the best thing to do is ask the model how I want a minimum of 98% accuracy. I've got 9,000 rows to do. How should we do this? The model will likely come back and tell you, hey, let's look at the headers and make sure that I read them all perfectly. Great, great. Um, Give me the rules for how to process my output. Okay, give the rules. Now let's do one and see if it's good and iterate, tweak that. Then we'll do five. And then you kind of go up in a nonlinear way until you're doing, maybe a few hundred rows at a time. So it takes a little bit of time, but you're way better off because you have QC'd what things look like as you go, and you work your way up to that, 200 or 400 rows at a time, depending on how complex it is. Has anybody experienced that? Done like super large data sets?
Yes, I've tried to do it with no success.
Okay, yeah, Pallavi, that's what you got to do. You got to break it down into bytes, and don't be afraid to ask the LLM what's the best way of going about doing something. So here, data received. Before we proceed, I want to confirm a few things. To, because your rules require me to avoid making assumptions, right? So that's good. It's making sure that it gets clarification. Your lab instructions say decide how to handle 24 versus 2025. Since we're only using your data, I need direction on forecasting methodology. Which option do you want to use? So pretty cool. I'm going to tell it. I also have I'm going to do some chain of thought reasoning in this prompt here, just to show kind of how that works. And I've told the LLM, now think, I am doing this. And so chat stopped me here and said, hey, man, I have a rule and I need to follow it, but it's kind of conflicting with what you said. With only 2 years of history, a regression on year isn't really adding information. Okay, fine. Just use the sum of least squares and get on with it. For brevity, I will say And so now chat is using the methodology that I prescribed and the way that I did. We had an interaction where it told me that, hey, your prompts and commands are conflicting with the rules that you gave me earlier. I need something before I continue. Ask some questions. And so it has all the parts of a good prompt interaction that you want to see here with persona. It has the chain of thought or methodology and the linear way of thinking that we're trying to do. The last thing that I want to do once I see if it's doing what I want, it's telling me its methodology, it's reporting back. This looks pretty good. It's telling me the observations to make sure that I understand the assumptions that were taken in creating the model. Seasonality exists. I did put some seasonality in the spend for funsies. Here are the assumptions for 2026, what we expect to happen. here's the baseline spend forecast. Even though I didn't prescribe, like ordinarily, I would say at this point, I would go to it and get really specific in how I want to see the data output. Um, it did that in an acceptable way already. It gives me an asterisk here saying, hey, WTI linked categories, blah, 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 blah. No elasticity could be derived because activity did not vary. So that's fine. But like I mentioned before, it's telling me that it's trying to get me to use it more. So this is a weak forecast because it's pretty, unilateral or one dimensional, and we can do a whole lot better and fancy stuff if you give me more information. So, yep, understood. Thank you, chat. Now I'm going to move on real quick and just say,
Micah, while you're doing that, one question is from Chris here on the chat is, can we have a copy of your chat GPT chat to run through? I guess because if we read in our own time, maybe we follow a little bit more some of the rules and how chat responded.
I'll send something out. Maybe not this one because it's going to be a little bit lame. But I have some saved files that go into the particular prompts for this, so I can send that out, no problem.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask for a sensitivity analysis because I want a range, and I'm going to ask it in a very plain way, create the same forecast, but give it a sensitivity analysis with a low, median, high value for each data point. And the next thing that I'm going to do before I say go, the magic word, is I'm going to ask it, help me to reason and design parameters for a realistic and useful high low guardrail. And it'll see that guardrail as a token, and it will know that it has meaning beyond something to prevent cars from going off of a cliff, because I'm using it in the context of a sensitivity analysis. Lawrence, can you suggest some of the paid version sites? I just used the $20 a month Chat GPT. And actually, we for our company we have an enterprise license for ChatGPT, so it's Patterson's ChatGPT instance that stays behind our firewall, where we can use our own sensitive data, and that data is guaranteed to not go back into the model to train things. Another question, how do you connect whatever AI tool you're using with the necessary data? Do you upload documents or do you grant access? That's a good point. So you can do this a few different ways. One, over here, you see I've got some tabs, but if you have a paid version or an enterprise license tool, you'll usually be able to create some kind of project over here. And in those projects, you can have all of these prompt rule sets already saved, so that if you're doing spend forecasting and you're always going to use the same amount, the same logic, reasoning, and stuff like that, you can have all the rules pre-built so that conversation is there, that rule set is there and understood by chat, and you just begin. And when it comes to giving access to the data, the best thing to do is usually ask the LLM the best way to give it access to that format. Sometimes it is, yes, copy and paste it. Sometimes, all right, Paul, see ya. Sometimes it is to put the file in there. Most often, the best way is not just directly uploading a file because there's additional metadata embedded in that file that it has to interpret. And what chat is almost always doing, or many of these LLMs, is they're usually taking this Excel sheet, they're transposing it into comma separated values or CSVs or tab separated values. They're just taking the basic elements and then they're running Python code. That Python code is to do whatever you want it to do. If you have the paid version, you can put chat into, well, I don't have it. You can put chat into thinking mode where it takes longer. Ran different prompts for forecast. Answer was about the same. Yeah, really nice. I'm gonna actually show what my answers were on this too. But you can have it in thinking mode where it will take longer to come up with an output. But at the same time, it's going to have a dialogue script where it's showing you a text representation of the code that it's running to get from point A to point B to C. And you can just kind of follow along with it. So back here, sense check. It's given me the sense check that I gave it. Wow. What actually drives the uncertainty? Commodity price risk, activity risk, general cost inflation. I recommend to do this. So it's telling me, hey, for the low case, let's say activity is down 5% and the commodity index is the same. The base is this, the high is a 10%. Category sensitivities for each category. It's got labor, rentals, dispatch services, all of my categories, and how they might move in that in that in that environment. So what I would use in a real budget review. I'm going to say excellent, which I don't need to say, but I am anyways. Use this method and go. And so now you can see that I have my spend forecast, management insights. See, it's giving me extra here. I need to specify my output. In the last few seconds that we have, please create a table that I can post directly into and now it's creating an output that I can just paste in. So that gets us through scenario 1. You still have scenarios 2 and 3 that you can do at your leisure whenever you like. But we're getting short on time, so I'm going to move straight to Q&A if that's good with everybody.
Yeah, that's good for me. There were any questions that we missed here? I think there was one. Did you already answer this? Can you suggest some of the paid version sites?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier my very simple thoughts on what models are good for what. I like ChatGPT for general everything. Claude is good for creative work like architects, stuff like that. Um, Chat's not that great at image generation. It's kind of the typical AI slop, you know. But Gemini is really good if you're doing statistical analysis, like really deep statistical analysis using R or some kind of program like that, because Gemini can create really good code for you to use, writing Python or something like that. And Anthropic, I haven't used Claude too much for statistical analysis and things like that. Microsoft, again, Copilot really good moving data between Microsoft applications. If you, for example, wanted to take an Excel Gantt chart and throw it into Microsoft Project, or you wanted to take an Excel sheet for your annual contracting plan, flip that into Microsoft lists where you can assign action items and target dates and have it be more of a living project document. Copilot's really good at that. Everything else, like I said, I use chat. It's interesting. We had to, when the new administration came in here in the U.S. and we had all this tariff stuff happening, my CEO asked me, "What is it going to be?" And I sat down with Chat for uh, about 6 hours or so, most of a day, and I came up with a full analysis of what the tariff effects would be on the next year. Um, Price elasticity, tariffs and counter tariffs, supply chains rewiring and moving around to account for that. And I was actually within 10% of what the tariff costs ended up being. So pretty cool.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm sure that would be so handy to a lot of us who were quite worried about the uncertainty it brought upon. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're having so much fun with tariffs, right?
Next question would be straight or foremost related, but we'll maybe need to do another session with you for that.
Can it tell us who will win the World Cup? Yeah, I'm sure if you ask it, it will tell you. Hey, so just wrapping up, look, thanks for spending 2 hours with me to close your day out today. I hope that it was useful for you. I hope that you continue to do a couple of things that are really important. One, keep the prompting guide, put it on your desk, and practice. You'll get better and better and better. And then secondly, have someone in your organization that you can bounce ideas off of and spend time with your coworkers using AI tools and improving together. Pallavi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really appreciative and love spending time with my supply chain family.
Thanks for your time, Mika. We cannot thank you enough for all this thing. Thanks.
All right. So yeah, like I said, I will send out a little follow-up with some of the prompts that I wrote to do these exercises. And I hope that you guys continue practicing and getting better and better. Cheers.
Bye now.